Hey friends, today's topic is epistaxis. What is epistaxis? It is the bleeding from the inside the nose. And it is seen in all age groups, be it children, adults and older people. It often presents as an emergency situation. Nose is richly supplied by both the external and internal carotid systems, both on the septum and the lateral walls. So firstly about the blood supply of the nasal septum. Here is a rough figure about that. So the nasal septum is supplied by the anterior ethmoidal artery, the posterior ethmoidal artery, the branches of sphenopalatine artery, septal branch of greater palatine artery, and septal branch of superior labial artery. The anterior ethmoidal artery and posterior ethmoidal artery are branches of ophthalmic artery, which in turn is a branch of internal carotid artery. The sphenopalatine artery and greater palatine artery are branches of maxillary artery, which in turn is a branch of external carotid artery. The superior labial artery is a branch of facial artery, which is also a branch of external carotid artery. Little's area is the area situated in the antero-inferior part of the nasal septum just above the vestibule. Four arteries, that is the anterior ethmoidal, septal branch of superior labial, septal branch of sphenopalatine and the greater palatine anastomose here to form a vascular plexus called the Kesselbach's plexus. This area is exposed to the drying effect of inspiratory current and to fingernail trauma and is the usual site for epistaxis in children and young adults. Now about the blood supply of lateral wall of nose. Here is a rough figure for that. So the lateral wall of nose is supplied by the following arteries. Firstly, the anterior ethmoidal artery, posterior ethmoidal artery, branches of sphenopalatine artery, lesser palatine artery, greater palatine artery, and branches of facial artery. The anterior ethmoidal artery and posterior ethmoidal artery are branches of ophthalmic artery, which in turn is a branch of internal carotid artery. The sphenopalatine artery, lesser palatine artery, and the greater palatine artery are branches of maxillary artery, which in turn is a branch of external carotid artery. And facial artery is also a branch of external carotid artery. We already discussed about the arteries supplying the nose, which results in the arterial bleeding in nose, and now we will discuss about veins and venous plexus leading to venous bleeding. First about the retrocolumellar vein. This vein runs vertically downwards just behind the columella, crosses the floor of nose and joins venous plexus on lateral nasal wall. This is the common site of venous bleeding in young people. Next is the Woodruff's plexus. It is situated inferior to posterior end of inferior turbinate and it is a site of posterior epistaxis in adults. So what causes this epistaxis? There are local causes, general causes and idiopathic, that is cause unknown. Local causes may originate in the nose or nasopharynx. The most common cause in the nose is trauma, that is fingernail trauma, injuries of nose, intranasal surgery, hard blowing of nose, fractures of the face and base of skull, and violent sneeze may cause nasal bleeding. The next cause are infections, which may be acute or chronic in origin. Acute ones like viral rhinitis and chronic includes all crust forming diseases. Next are foreign bodies, which may be non-living or living. Non-living as in any neglected foreign body or rhinolith, and living as in maggots or leeches. The maggot infestation of nose is known as nasal myiasis. Then there are neoplasms of nose and paranasal sinuses, which may be benign or malignant. Atmospheric changes like high altitude, sudden decompression as seen in Caisson disease, or deviated nasal septum DNS may cause bleeding from nose. Next about the nasopharyngeal causes, it may be due to adenoiditis, juvenile angiofibroma or malignant tumors. General causes of epistaxis may be due to the disorders of cardiovascular system, disorders of blood and blood vessels, liver disease, kidney disease, excessive use of certain drugs, and other causes. In other causes, there are three main things, that is mediastinal compression, acute general infection, and vicarious menstruation. The cardiovascular diseases leading to epistaxis include hypertension and arteriosclerosis. The disorders of blood and blood vessels include aplastic anemia, leukemia, thrombocytopenic and vascular purpura, scurvy, vitamin K deficiency, etc. The liver diseases include hepatic cirrhosis. In that there is a deficiency of factor 2, factor 7, factor 9 and factor 10 which are produced in the liver, and these factors are very essential for the coagulation process to take place, and the deficiency of which leads to epistaxis. Then the kidney disease includes chronic nephritis. Certain drugs cause epistaxis, which are the excessive use of salicylates and other analgesics as for pain or headache, anticoagulant therapy for heart disease. The excessive use of such drugs leads to epistaxis. The tumors of mediastinum causes mediastinal compression leading to a raised venous pressure in the nose leading to epistaxis. The acute general infection causing epistaxis include influenza, measles, chickenpox, whooping cough, etc. Vicarious menstruation means the epistaxis occurring at the time of menstruation. On to the sites of epistaxis. 90% of epistaxis is from the Little's area, which as discussed before is the anterior-inferior part of the nasal septum. Another site for epistaxis is above the level of middle turbinate. Bleeding from this area is due to the anterior and posterior ethmoidal vessels of the internal carotid system. Another area is below the level of middle turbinate. Here bleeding is due to the branches of sphenopalatine artery. The posterior part of nasal cavity, in this site, blood flows directly into the pharynx. The bleeding may be diffuse in nature, that is originating both from the septum and lateral nasal wall. This is often seen in general systemic disorders and other blood dyscrasias. Nasopharynx may be also the site of bleeding. Now about the classification of epistaxis. So the blood from the nose may flow out from the front of the nose with patient in sitting position, or it may flow back into the throat. Patient may swallow it and later have a coffee colored vomitus. So accordingly it is classified into anterior epistaxis and posterior epistaxis. The posterior epistaxis may be misdiagnosed as hematemesis. There are certain differences between the anterior and posterior epistaxis, such as incidence of anterior epistaxis is more common. The site is Little's area or anterior part of lateral wall. The age group most commonly influenced is children or young adults. The most common cause is trauma, and bleeding is usually mild and can be easily controlled by local pressure or anterior pack. Whereas in the case of posterior epistaxis, it is less common. It mostly occurs from the posterior superior part of nasal cavity, and it commonly occurs after 40 years of age. It is spontaneous in nature and often due to hypertension or arteriosclerosis, and in this case bleeding is severe and requires hospitalization, and post-nasal pack is often required. In the management part of epistaxis, it is important to know the following things. Firstly, the mode of onset, whether it was spontaneous or due to fingernail trauma, the duration and frequency of bleeding, the amount of blood lost that has happened till now, the side of nose from where bleeding is occurring, the type of bleeding, whether bleeding is of anterior or posterior type, history of known medical ailments such as hypertension, leukemia, mitral valve disease, cirrhosis and nephritis. Any known bleeding tendency in the patient or family is also inquired about. And lastly, the history of drug intake such as analgesics, anticoagulants, etc. First aid is of prime importance here, because imagine if you or your friend start suddenly bleeding from the nose, what will you do? So remember, most of the time bleeding occurs from the Little's area and can be easily controlled by pinching the nose with thumb and index finger for about 5 to 10 minutes. The following figure shows the Trotter's method, in which the patient is made to sit up, leaning a little forward over a basin to spit any blood, and is asked to breathe quietly from the mouth. Cold compresses should be also applied to cause reflex vasoconstriction. If the patient continues to bleed, there is severe persistent bleeding, then take him to a hospital. and there we can do cauterization. It is useful in the cases of anterior epistaxis when bleeding point has been located. The area is first topically anesthetized and the bleeding point cauterized with a bead of silver nitrate or coagulated with electrocautery. Another method is anterior nasal packing. It is used in the cases of active anterior epistaxis where the site of bleeding is difficult to localize. Here, a ribbon gauze soaked with liquid paraffin is used. About 1 meter of gauze is required for each nasal cavity. The pack can be removed after 24 hours if bleeding has stopped. Sometimes it has to be kept for 2 to 3 days. In that case, systemic antibiotics should be given to prevent sinus infection and toxic shock syndrome. In the cases of posterior epistaxis, posterior nasal packing is done. A patient requiring postnasal packing should always be hospitalized. It is done as shown in the diagram. Nowadays, epistaxis nasal balloons are also available. A nasal balloon has two bulbs, one for the postnasal space and the other for the nasal cavity. The posterior balloon is inflated with 10 ml of saline and anterior balloon is inflated with 30 ml of saline. Other methods used are endoscopic cauterization, elevation of mucoperichondrial flap and submucous resection operation. Ligation of vessels may be attempted, such as that of external carotid artery, maxillary artery or ethmoidal artery. Transnasal endoscopic sphenopalatine artery ligation may be done. Or the embolization of vessels may be done, such as that of internal maxillary artery. Now about the general measures in epistaxis. Make the patient sit up with a backrest and record any blood loss taking place through spitting or vomiting. Reassure the patient. A mild sedation should be given. Keep a check on pulse, BP and respiration. Maintain the hemodynamics. Blood transfusion may be required. Antibiotics may be given to prevent sinusitis if pack is to be kept beyond 24 hours. And intermittent oxygen may be required in patients with bilateral packs because of increased pulmonary resistance from the nasopulmonary reflex. Investigate and treat the patient for any underlying local or general cause.